It's been 20 years since Western powers invaded, resulting in the deaths of 457 British personnel, while 2,000 more were injured. Combat fighting ended in 2014, but a strong presence remained. On Sunday, we saw the country fall back into the hands of the Taliban, despite the UK spending £22 billion on the mission to restabilise the country. Now, let's not forget the $2 trillion of American money too. And both countries don't want it going to waste either. In a phone call last night, US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised to work together to help the people of Afghanistan and stressed the importance of not losing the gains made there over the last 20 years. Now, the pair said it's important that we protect ourselves against any emerging threat from terrorism. So have all their efforts been wasted? Was the war a mistake? Benjamin.
I mean, look, what's happened in the last couple of days is utterly horrendous. And I think it's only going to get worse in Afghanistan. But I just don't accept this idea that it was a mistake to have 20 years of relative stability. You know, to say that because it's ended so messily and that so much of it has been undone doesn't mean that it was wrong. I spoke to a woman last night who was a refugee from Afghanistan who came to this country. She was a judge in Afghanistan and the Taliban tried to kill her twice before she was forced to kill her. They shot her and they ran her over and she survived. Wow. And she's been talking to lots of female MPs and high-profile activists there. And she said that they are begging for help because they deserve freedom. And in her words, she said, I don't want to throw away what we achieved in the last 20 years.
Right.
And that's the truth. You know, there are 2.5 million women and girls who have had an education who wouldn't have. You know, they can't lose that education. They've got that now. They've got the minds of their own. You know, you have so many people that are alive because the Taliban weren't going around being barbaric. And there's the other factor, which is, you know, the 457, I think it is, soldiers who've died, British soldiers. You know, I'm not willing to accept that they died not achieving anything.
That they died in vain.
For all of the individual Afghanistanis that they helped and the stability that they created for 2 decades, for that, it wasn't a mistake for me.
Carol?
You can't say it's a mistake if you understand the reasons why we went into Afghanistan in the first place. We went in not to rescue the country's beleaguered people, not to impose our Western democracy on them. We went there for 2 reasons. 1, to kill terrorists, and 2, to smash the Taliban. And we did that fantastically effectively well. And I get really angry now when I hear people saying that the men who died out there, that it was a waste of their lives, because that is an insult to those men and to their families. Every death is a tragedy, but those brave men and women who were there died fulfilling a mission which was fulfilled. You know, we did smash the Taliban. We did kill the terrorists. You know, the US decided to go in the wake of 9/11, and it was the right and necessary thing to do. And think about it. There hasn't been a comparable attack since on any Western country because of that. And my fear now is that now that we're out of there in this chaotic, terrible way that we've withdrawn. Biden promised a safe and you know, ordered withdrawal. It's been the polar opposite of that. And my worry now is that everything that they've done over the past 20 years, you know, every terrorist group on the planet will be making their way to Afghanistan as we speak. There are already reports that British jihadis are on their way there. So if they are, you can guarantee everybody else is too. It will become a safe haven again. You know, what we should have done, it's not up to us to occupy a country, but we should have left enough troops there to help the Afghanistan army keep the Taliban at bay.
And a lot of people have said that because they've already apparently said, the Taliban have apparently said they're providing safe haven for Al-Qaeda, for instance.
Exactly.
But can I just check up what you just said? All these girls have had this education. Yes, they have. And now they've lost it forever. They will never get that back. You know,
but you can't uneducate.
Well, what can they do with it?
But also,
if they show their education, they will be battered down.
But also, of course, you know, you say they've lost it forever. We can only hope that's not the case.
It is. Well, how can it not be the case?
But when you've got millions of people, millions of women in particular, who have this education, who know that another Afghanistan is possible.
They stick
They're
their
gonna have
heads above the parapet and they will die.
But they
really
would be incredibly brave, and they may well tragically die. But they're going to have a fighting spirit that they wouldn't without that 20 years.
Well, let's bring in, what I want to do now is bring in Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is the mother of Private James Prosser, a British soldier killed in Afghanistan in 2009. Good morning, Sarah. Thank you for being with us. I'm thinking it must be emotionally a really difficult time for you. How do you feel hearing the people ask the question, was it all in vain, the last 20 years?
It's really heartbreaking. It's really distressing to see what's happening in Afghanistan right now. But I cannot think that James's life was in vain, or anybody else's, and all of the ones that are suffering daily, haunted by what's happened to them from Afghanistan. How we did it might not have been right, but I cannot think that it was in vain, and we have to build on that, and we can't just walk away.
Do you think that there should be talking with the Taliban, that we should be doing that?
Yes, I do.
You do?
It's proven that we have just by war. I think now we do need to talk to them, and we should have done that in 2001 when they requested it, and when, and Donald Rumsfeld refused it. We could be looking at a different situation now if we'd done that in 2001.
Yeah. How do you think James would feel right now?
I think he would be really devastated. I have to admit that when he was going in 2009, I didn't want him to go. As a mum, that's not where you want your child to be. I wasn't even sure at that point that we should have even been there. But we've invested 20 years in that country, and we cannot walk away from those people at all. James would be devastated because he firmly believed, and made me realise how important it was to him that we should be there. He wanted to make a difference. He knew that they should have a way of life as we do. And I'm hoping that is not going to be taken.
Sarah, do you get angry like I get angry? And you've got much more reason to, when people say that people like your son James, died in vain, it was a waste. Because it wasn't a waste. We have got to be proud of people like James and people who went there to not just make a difference, but to protect the West. That's what he was there for. So his life wasn't wasted. Every death is a tragedy, but we must be proud of him, and you must be.
I'm so proud of him. So proud of him from the day he was born. But and it does hurt when people do say it was a waste, were their lives in vain? No life is in vain, and that's why we must protect the Afghan lives as well. Yeah. James did a brave thing, as did so many others, and we cannot let this end in this chaotic manner.
And Sarah, how do you feel about the numbers of refugees when you hear a lot of discussion around refugees? What are your feelings?
I don't think it should just be left to us to deal with. I think it's a global issue, and everybody should be helping. We cannot leave the Afghan people in this situation. They deserve to have a life, as do we all.
Yes.
And Sarah, one of the things that Joe Biden said is that no more blood should be shed by staying there. What do you think? Do you think it would have been right to keep sending British and American soldiers to Afghanistan, putting their lives at risk like your son's was?
He said that if the Afghan government army are not going to fight for their country, why should others? And I do see how he comes to that, but I think we should have invested more time in the Afghan government and the army. I think there should have been more talks to try to have a coalition between maybe the Afghan government and the Taliban. We cannot impose a westernised, centralised governance on this country. It's a tribal country, and they do not understand our ways. And it seems like we don't understand theirs, although the Taliban seem to have the upper hand right now and seem to know a lot more about us than we know of them.
They've done more research than we did going in. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. And as I said before, it must be a really difficult time and bring up a lot of sad memories for you, does it?
It is very, very difficult. I'm trying to think that we've got to pull something back from this and be positive, so that no one can say any life is in vain, whether that be ours, my son, the Afghan people. We have to come back from this, and we have to morally look after those people.